Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? How you guys doing? Welcome to another show. You're now listening to Under the Palm right about now. It is Monday, so Under the Palm is back with your host, Mayana Hasofaret. Today's show is entitled, Do We as a Society Socialize Our Boys and Men to Be Aggressive? Once again, here's the title, Do We as a Society Socialize Our Boys and Men to Be Aggressive? We got the whole panel here, plus the host. So without further ado, let me bring in the host of this particular program, Mayana. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Al. Shalom, and welcome to the second episode of the second season of Under the Palm on Debate Talk for You, where Hebrew women speak. Before we begin, I want to give all glory and honor and praise to the Holy One of Creation. May this discussion and all of our communications be edifying. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If you tuned in last Monday to the Relationship Challenge here on Debate Talk for You, you heard some startling statistics about domestic violence and how it affects our families and children, which brings us to our conversation today, where we will be looking at questions that explore, do we as a society socialize our men and boys to be aggressive? But before we do, let's meet our panel. Shalom, shalom. I hear there's elders are in the house. Imam Naami, are you here? Imam Naami's not here yet?
Not yet. I'll bring her in later, as soon as she calls in.
Okay, that's great. So, home panel Amuna is here, though. Amuna, go ahead and greet the people.
All praises be to the Most High, the Holy One of Creation. Giving thanks and praise for another day, another opportunity to sit down at the table and have a discussion. Thank you for having me, Sister Moon. Shout out to Brother Sal and all the elders that's on the panel this evening, and sisters as well. Shalom, shalom.
Hallelujah. Welcome, welcome. Tonight, unfortunately, due to previous engagements and, of course, the high holy days, we do not have Sister Only Love or Sister Malaka with us tonight, but we send them love and a lot of affection, traveling mercies to them that are on the road. Instead, we do have two special guests. We have Sister Yaisha and Sister Nefshi, both sisters that are from our Hanashim family. Everybody join me in welcoming them. Sister Yaisha, do you want to go ahead and greet the people?
Shalom, shalom. This is Sister Yaisha Bat Yehuda. All praise be to the Most High Yah. And I'm hoping that this conversation be edifying and pleasing in the Most High sight. And we come to a better understanding to strengthen our relationships, our family bonds, and our nation as a whole.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Sister Nefshi, I hear that you're a long-time listener. We appreciate your support. Go ahead and say hello to the people. First time on the panel.
Shalom, shalom, Yisrael. This is Nefshi, Ahava Bat Yisrael, and I'm glad to be a part of this panel while we lift up the name of the Creator of heaven and earth and edify the minds of the people and create a conversation that will bring about change, but never forgetting the one who put us into being. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. As always, one of our many, many blessings is that, and what makes the Under the Palm panel special is that we do invite the voices and we honor the voices of the elders who came before us. I'm told that we do, in fact, have a confirmation that Imam Naami is in the building. So I want to go ahead and turn the Imam Naami, Lala Tov.
Okay, Lala Tov. All praises to the Most High, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Savior. Greetings to all of my daughters and sons that are on the line. Very glad to be a part of this panel this evening. Glad I tuned in on time. I usually am so busy that I forget about it. So I'm glad that I was able to get it on time today. Shalom Uvraka, or Shalom Uvrakot.
That's what Ima is by no means exaggerating. Although she claims to be retired, she's probably the most busy woman that I know. Even at her older age, she's quite sprite in her movements, quite involved in the community, and always willing to listen to her daughters and sons in the faith.
Amen.
And so we are very, very grateful to have her not just on the line, but in our lives. With that, to hallelujah, Ima, what I want to is I want to start by asking a question. So I'm going to ask you to give me, I'm going to go around once, and if we can do it rather quickly, we'll go around maybe a second time. So I'm going to ask everyone one at a time to give me one word to tell me when you think of what is masculine or manly, what one word comes to mind to define or to express masculinity or manliness? Ima, you have the floor.
Yeah, I would say accountability.
Beautiful. Nefshi, what would you say is masculine? What's manly? When we think about man.
Strength.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Strength?
Oh, is that Nefshi?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think she said strength.
I heard strength, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, strength.
Yes.
So what would you consider a trait of a man?
Who you thinking to Nefshi?
Yaisha.
Oh, me. Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, Slika. Okay. I would say leadership.
Leadership.
Yeah.
Amuna, what you got for me?
I would say protection.
Oh.
Protection. Let's go around one more time. Ima, what you got for me?
I say, you mean come up with another one?
Another word that we would associate with being men, specifically men.
Oh, okay. I would have to go. I'm caught between the other two that were mentioned: leadership and protection. I guess if I got one choice, I'll say leadership.
No, something new.
Oh, something new. Okay, okay. Let me see.
Build a list here of manly traits.
We said leadership, strength,
accountability,
and what else?
And protection.
Okay. Certainly godliness.
Godliness. Okay. Nefshi, what you got for me?
Presence.
Presence?
Yes.
As in being physically present, as in being there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yaisha, what makes a man?
Responsibility.
Manly. I'm sorry?
Responsibility.
Responsibility.
Being responsible. Yeah.
Responsibility. Okay. Imuna, what you got for me?
A provider.
Okay, so we have provider. Okay, so just for the audience who may not have been writing things down, what we have from our sisters, and it's very clear that we're talking to a panel of Hebrew women, we're looking at accountability, strength, leadership, protection, godliness, being present, responsible, and a provider. These are all great qualities that these Hebrew women are saying that make a man in their estimation. So when I say to you, today we're in the middle of, we're in the first weeks of the Intimate Partner Domestic Violence Awareness Month. What do you think? What would you say, or from your experience, from your research? We have some very well-educated women on our panel. From your research, from your learning, your education, or even your experiences, what makes a man, or what factors would you say makes the man abusive, or would make a child or a man abusive? a boy or a man abusive? What are the contributing factors?
Who are you talking to first?
I haven't called names yet. I'm going to always start with Imana.
Okay.
You kick that off. What do you think makes a man abusive? Makes a man.
I think basically his upbringing and what he's witnessed, what the examples that he's seen growing up.
Upbringing examples he's seen. Okay, so we're thinking in the family or in the media or both?
No, the base in the home and in his environment, his neighborhood.
Okay. So from there, I'll go to Imuna. Imuna, what would you say contributes to an abusive mentality in men?
Lack of self-control.
Lack of personal discipline. Okay, so Yaisha.
I feel, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I feel that his own insecurities, and it could stem from an insecurity of his bad upbringing, to borrow a little bit from Ema, or dysfunctional upbringing. Also an insecurity of not growing up with his own father, as well as not feeling to be in a secure place in this society. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to let Nefshi take it from there.
All right, Nefshi, she alley-ooped it over to you.
Shalom. Agreeing with my Emas and Aisha 100%. I agree with them 100%. My past experience, having had been in a very abusive relationship, was what he saw he thought was right. No one told him that what he saw was wrong. Also the fact that once he got into society, the only answer and help that was available to this young man at the time was jail. And it didn't do anything to help the behavior. It was something that became part of who he was. So I agree with my Emas and Staija. Very true.
Wow, these are great answers. I'm pretty sure that once we go back around, somebody probably has something else to ask. I'm going to give you an opportunity to add something else. Ema, did anything else come to mind while we were talking about some of these ways or contributing factors to what might make the man act out abusively? What kind of things contribute to that?
What I think about is the fact that our black men, as well as our women, but particularly our black men, to a great degree, always feel that they're a moving target, and it forces a lot of anger in them. I feel a lot of times they try to repress that anger, but the times that they don't, it comes out in violence. Either they join gangs or they become abusive to their women. Some of them even become abusive to their parents because of this anger that they're fostering all the time. And the fact that they feel powerless.
Right.
Great answers. Amuna, what would you say?
It's the same question?
Yeah. A second contributing factor.
I heard powerless, lack of self-discipline.
Security, absence, father, no resources available for helping.
Right. This an example of what manhood is.
No, these are things that might cause toxic masculinity. What makes them act out violently or abusively in their relationships, and we're looking at, well, maybe there's something in their environment that they're reproducing, or there's a redirection of anger. This sense of powerlessness makes them come and be powerful in the home space, and so they become abusive for those reasons. They lack the discipline which you offered. They're insecure in other spaces, so they make up for it in this space. The absence of a father, or there's just no other way to come out of, to break the cycle other than jail, as Nefshi suggested. So can you think of another reason or another way that these men may become abusive in their homes? Other things are going on.
Right. I would put it all together and just essentially say it's just a bad example wherever you're getting it from, popular media, the people in the neighborhood. It's just you had a bad model to begin with, and you thought that that was misinformed, that this is what manhood is. Somebody don't listen to you, you do such. So it's just being misinformed about what manhood is, period. Because that happens in the streets. You a punk, you're going to let somebody talk to you like, you know what I'm saying? So the dialogue that's around manhood is misinformed to begin with. And once he adheres to that, then he's more likely to have those voices inform him on his behavior, what's right and what's wrong.
Great. Okay, so I'll give it just last. Nefshi, if you have something else, Yaisha, if you don't want to, you can pass, and we can just kind of tie some of this in. This is why I'm asking these questions to begin with.
Go ahead, Nefshi. Do you have anything you want to say?
The only thing I want to say is that expectation level for subletting. I didn't hear what Ema had said or Taisha, but the expectation is set very high for men of color, and the fact that there are not enough resources for them to tap into to get at and connect with other older brothers and older men who may be in their lives or programs that's extended to them can cause them to act out violently.
Okay. Aisha, did you want to add anything?
Not really. I think everybody touched on pretty much, what I was thinking.
Awesome. So I reproduced pretty much this very quickly, kind of a smaller model of a session that I attended earlier this week at an organization called Connect. I'm just currently training, getting my certificate in domestic violence, and we did this exercise during the training. And what was very interesting for me was as we compiled a list that sounds a lot like the ones that the sisters did regarding what could induce this kind of violence or aggression in men. We came up with answers like it's normalized, that we normalize male aggression. And so that's one of the reasons that men may act out aggressively or abusively, because we normalize that. That there's a sense of empowerment that comes with disempowering someone else. Sometimes religion and culture can contribute to the man feeling as if this is okay. It gets reinforced by certain religious ideas and cultural ideals. The notion of power and control. That power and control is one of the other ways or reasons men become abusive. That there is, of course, the factor of mental disorder, the fact that society is sometimes gives permission in the spaces, and like we said here, reproducing the violence that they've seen before. Media insecurity came up, that there are environmental and resources, economics, which also came up in our discussion just now, education disparity. There's also what is recognized as abuse. Some people don't think they're being abusive. And then there's like the idea that we even have terms like makeup sex. And we think that's okay. So there's violence, and then there's violence or violence reward cycle that we're looking at here. There's socialization, survival, sexual dominance, substance abuse. That there are some women are going through substance abuse, and that's what makes them violent at home. It was very interesting. The man that was coming in, he spoke. It was a woman. It was co-led, and one of the things that one of the men brought to our attention was that there becomes an unhealthy correlation. And I'll give you an example that he gave. The example that he gave was during the Bill Clinton administration. We're all kind of old enough to remember the Bill Clinton himself saying he did not have sexual relations with her because he's thinking penetration, but omitting the fact that there was this oral component to what he did do. And so what the gentleman suggested in the training was that this type of sexual interaction is not considered sex now. It gets desexualized. It kind of gets demoted, and then so people are not considering this a sexual act. Right, so now children. He said that during this time, research showed that children stopped kissing. Young people weren't kissing. Kissing was too intimate, but oral sex was something they would do because that wasn't considered an intimate act. just because, this was shown that sex was this thing and that this was not that. So that was very interesting, how we understand sex gets changed, how we understand sexual dominance gets changed, how we understand abuse and the like gets changed. And also, as we talked about, I think we touched on it a little bit we talked about upbringing and examples. What came out was parental discipline strategies. Like if you see that the way a parent wants to discipline, or when they want to get a point across, the parent discipline through what could be considered violence. And so men feel like they think they're disciplining or teaching their partner, they do so through violence. And also they struggle with the concept of consent and the like. Okay, so I said that, and we made this list. We thought we were doing some real work. We thought this was impressive. We had a list of factors, only to be told that we were wrong. The guy, like all these things that I read to you and all the things that we came up with, the trainer went and put big black X's through every single one of our answers and told us that these may be factors, but the fact is it's a choice. That all of these things may actually be happening. All of these things could be components. But in every instance, the man has a choice. And he chooses to hit you. Because the idea is this, and this is what I think is really fascinating. The idea was this. If he wouldn't act out against someone else, it's because he knows there's a consequence associated with attacking this person. But it's okay for me to go home and hit my intimate partner. I wouldn't do it here. I'll do it here. This is always a choice. And it's not like he's going around just, unleashing anger all over the place. It is very specific space. So there's a choice associated there. There's a choice. There's something about that space what makes him say, you know what, it's okay here. I thought that was an interesting thing, and I wanted to share that with the panel and the listening audience because, I consider myself pretty well-versed in these things, and he totally threw me for a loop with this idea that there are choices being made. And so it brought me to the thought of how are we reinforcing this idea that it's safe to be abusive in certain spaces? And so, that's where the question, do we as a society socialize our boys and men to be aggressive? Is that something something that we reinforce when we come into contact with them, which is why I asked about the notions of masculinity. And I was immediately reminded I'm definitely talking to a panel of Hebrew women because we got things like godliness, being present, being responsible, being accountable, strength, leadership, and being a provider. And as opposed to some of the other responses like, being athletic, being big, being strong. We got strength, but these other more, let me see if I have. Actually, we did. It was a pretty prayer oriented training. I forget this. They had them as prayer warriors, but then there was also this idea of being dominant, tough, macho, the provider, the breadwinner, fearless. He was the husband, the lawmaker, the athlete, the authority person, the disciplinary and strong person, the penis, the beard, spiritual leader, and so he was also understood as loyal or the fighter. So some of these were necessarily great in the spiritual spaces. We considered him our prayer warrior. There was this idea of spiritual leadership. I love the fact that we're listening to the sister say we need him to be present. There's a dependency on the man in this way. I'm sure if I juxtapose this and asking about what we consider women to be, that'd be a different discussion about how we conceptualize the man. But the reason for us to do this now, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to ask you, what do you think about the two exercises that we just went over? How do you think it lends itself to the conversation so far? Emma, what do you think about what we're doing with the two examples and how it might help the conversation that we're trying to have? Did I lose Emma?
Yeah, call just dropped. Oh.
Okay, she'll call back. I know she'll call back. So I'll go ahead with Imuna. Imuna, what do you think? What do you think about the trainer telling us that all these answers are wrong and there's really a decision happening here, and that the boys and men are making decisions to be violent? That although these are factors, it's not a fact that they must abuse because of that. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I wouldn't totally agree with it, because the conditions that take place at home and the conditions that take place at work, they may intersect, but they're not the same things. And so, yes, all things we ultimately do are a choice, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, but the factors of whether or not you're going to rough up your coworker and you're into a at-home domestic situation where you're more exposed and the person knows more about you. You know what I'm saying? And so it creates a environment where this familiarity breeds a level of content. And so I would say that as a choice, but I wouldn't disqualify all of the factors and the different relationship dynamics that would cause. This is why you see such high levels of intimate partner violence, as opposed to people just walking up to their coworkers and punching them in the face. I'm not saying you should do that, but because there's different things in play. You know what I mean? And so that's what I would say.
Okay. Yaisha, what are your thoughts?
I would say that I think your training is correct, because despite whatever the environment is and the circumstances, it's still a choice. We still make choices. Right now, economically, things are very hard for some of our brothers as far as, if they didn't get the right education, if they didn't grow up in the right environment, it's rough. But at the same time, some brothers decide to go back to school and, work whatever little job they can get until they can do better. And some brothers decide to sell drugs. Do I say that the one who chooses to sell drugs had no other choice if he's a victim of society? No, it's still a choice. He still made a choice to do those things. Even though his environment may have fostered it, we still make a choice in life, no matter how desperate or how bad our circumstances per se, are. So I would say that whoever trained you is correct. Being violent is a choice, because if a man wouldn't walk up to now you do have some men, because I live in a very dangerous side of Brooklyn where I see men who walk up to other men, punch them in the face, everything. But I will say with most men that I have seen in my lifetime that are the type that participate in a domestic violence against their domestic partner, they know that if they was to walk up to someone or have a conflict with someone who they felt could harm them, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go hit somebody who they felt could protect themselves or would be a threat to them. So It is a choice, so to speak, where you choose to hit someone that you feel is not going to hit you back or is fearful of you.
Right.
But I'll leave it there.
Toda for that. Before I go to Nephew, I'm just going to maybe recap the two opinions that we have so far. So what I'm hearing from Imuna is that the factors cannot be underscored. We cannot diminish the fact that certain conditions will breed certain results, and that it's true that we have it's a truism, it's an axiom that says that familiarity breeds contempt. So there is something to having someone in a space of proximity that makes you feel even more vulnerable, and to push against that. What I hear that even with those things being the case, there's still space to choose. You can choose to not be a victim of the moment and walk away from that. You can choose not to make those kinds of choices in other spaces all of the time. What the trainer said, for example, or what I have in my notes, if you were to see my notes, you would think I was probably crazy. But it says that the list, where we were making the list of factors, he said the list does not hold the person accountable. It doesn't account for agency or give the man room to have self-discipline, which is one of the other things we said on our Hebrew channel, that discipline was one of the things that we considered made the man a man, his self-discipline. And he said, making a list like this doesn't account for, well, where's his discipline, even if you do have these issues, and that the person knows who to abuse. So, Nefshi, having heard both, Amuna and Yaisha giving very compelling positions. What would you say as you weigh in on the conversation?
You're asking me?
Yeah, Nefshi.
Yeah, Nefshi.
Oh, I agree with everything in it. It's a choice. Through personal experience and from having had conversations with sisters younger than me and sisters my age, and there are some men who unconsciously take partners who appear weaker than them. So therefore setting the stage that if I have a moment I cannot go and rough my coworker up or act out in public, I could go home. All of it's choice. Every bit of it is a choice. Yes.
Okay. Well, I have Ema back on the line, and we have one caller. So for those of you who are listening, and the number to call is 319-527-6239. Remember to press 1 if you want to join the conversation. Until then, I'll give the mic over to Ema Naami, who has rejoined us, and then from there we'll take our first caller. Ema, did you hear the question? Do you want to weigh in?
No, I apologize. I was busy with my mouth just flapping in the breeze and didn't realize that my phone had automatically cut off. It usually gives me a warning, and I'm looking at it, and I'm saying, is anybody on the line? Because I'm not hearing anything. And then I realized that the phone is looking at me blank. So.
Well, it sounds like we missed out on some wisdom, so if you don't mind replaying a little bit of that for us.
I'll try to. Like I said, I believe that in answer to the question that was on the floor, I believe that the society, and in fact, I've noticed this throughout many societies. It's not just the Western society, but certainly Eastern societies as well. They promote the idea that a man is supposed to be aggressive. He's the soldier. He's the warrior. He's the strong one. He's the fighter. And they promote this type of image. And unfortunately, in many societies, women are looked at as the recipients of this, that they should be the recipients of this aggressiveness. And this happens much too often. It's if you have a bad day at the office, you can come home and beat your wife. That's okay. If somebody else has made you angry, you can come home and beat her, and that's okay. And a lot of times there is no consequence to this kind of action because women have been silent. Some women are definitely afraid. I've just witnessed a situation recently that I think the woman is a victim of abuse, but I can't say anything because I don't know. And I know that you have to be very careful, even if you think a woman is a victim of abuse, because bringing it out or trying to make it public might make her the subject of more abuse. So you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful in situations like that, and you have to have. First of all, you have to know that she's a victim of abuse. But if she is, you have to have an escape plan for her or something in order for her to get out of that situation if she wants to leave. Sometimes women are convinced that they must undergo this kind of treatment in order to stay in a relationship. And if they do, they it's almost like the Stockholm syndrome where they become, enamored of their abuser. So that's a situation that you have to handle very delicately, and you have to you have to really know your business before you go in on a situation like that.
Ema brought up some important points that actually I want to cover as we develop and as we delve into the conversation. So I'm writing these down because these points that we will definitely be exploring. Right now we have a caller. I wanted to hear from Ema if she thought it was a choice or not, but I have a caller. So let's go ahead and take a phone call. Sal, go ahead and pass them through, please.
Hello, this is Brother Mercy. Hello, ladies. How you doing?
Okay.
Hey, shalom, Brother Mercy. Welcome to the conversation. Long time no hear. How you been?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I was going to say that What I found about this whole situation is, I'm a teacher in the school system, so I see this type of stuff going all the time with the little kids. And, I mean, what I've seen is a lot of these men that beat on these women, I think a lot of cases, you may find that they come from single-family homes where they're raised by the mother. And, we have a culture of guys who want to be football players. Football is a very violent sport. So, in that, I guess in that respect, they're trained to be violent. But still, I still feel it's a real big problem because I just feel like our men, I don't know, I just don't see this whole thing about them being aggressive, being violent towards women. I just don't see it. And what I do see is these little girls, we gravitate to these boys. And I've talked to these boys. I've talked to these boys on more than one occasion. Stop putting their hands on these little girls. But these little girls be chasing these little boys. So I don't get it. I really don't get it. I mean, I chastise them. I discipline the little boys. I do all of this, but these girls be chasing after these boys. I guess they feel like they care in some kind of crazy way. I have no idea. I don't understand it. So I'm not in the position to teach the girls how, and I tell my kids, I'll teach a boy how to be a man, but I can't teach a little girl how to. I mean, I can tell you it's not right to go after this little boy, but I mean, I think that's the place for the mother to tell you that. But if he puts his hands on you, I think that's an obvious sign that this ain't the guy for you. But I don't know. I'm not getting it. I'm just not catching it. But, I've chastised a little boy. I've told a little boy, I've done all kind of stuff to these boys.
You repeated that you chastised the little boys a few times. So what is the response from the young men when you chastise them and you say this is not appropriate? How do they respond to a man telling them? Because you also go on to blame the single-parent mother household, that the mother is doing something, or it's because she's from a mother's household. So there we have a male here, a teacher, a person in a position saying this is not acceptable behavior, a man saying this is not acceptable behavior. So what is the response?
The little boy, he listens to me, okay? And this little boy tells me that the girls are aggressive toward him. This is what he's saying. I mean, because these little girls, they got some bad mouths on them. I mean, I'm not here to say they're innocent. I mean, these girls be cursing and carrying on foul mouths. I'm just saying, he says that's his defense. But I always tell him there's no excuse putting your hands on a female. That's my argument. I said there's no excuse for you putting your hands on a girl. I don't care what she says or what you think she's trying to do. You don't put your hands on a girl. I tell the boys, this is what I tell the boys. Okay, but what I'm saying is, why do these girls like this boy? This is what I don't understand, because you should be turned off at that point. You see what I'm saying? The girls should be turned off by that boy.
Let's make it together. So what you're describing, you're saying, is that the boys are aggressive, but the girls are aggressive. And so the question is, why are these aggressive girls attracted to these aggressive boys?
Right, exactly. Because when I was growing up, I don't know, maybe just me. When I was growing up, I thought that was unattractive for a boy to put his hands on a girl. I just thought that was you just ain't a man. You was considered a punk when I was growing up. And I tell the boys this. I said, you're a faggot, you put your hands on a girl. Why don't you put your hands on another man and see what that man do to you? So you're going to put your hands on a girl because, you you're stronger than she is, and she can't really put that weight on you. But see, so if you want to fight somebody, come at me. Why are you coming at this little girl? So that's why I tell them, and I try to speak to them as a man. But these girls, this is what I'm trying to get you to see. These girls sometimes, they still be...
Mercy, stay on the line. Stay on the line. We're going to talk to... Let me check with Sal to make sure we don't have any other callers, but go ahead and stay on the line. We're going to get some feedback from the panel on some of these excellent points that you are bringing out. Emma, what do you think about what Brother Mercy is telling us about what he is finding happening in the high schools?
He's right about that. Now that they have
yes, he is.
Now that the schools have this idea that there's what do you call it, gender neutral type situation, wherein girls and boys, they can be whatever they want to be. And I've seen some girls, and I'm telling you, I saw, I have to corroborate what he's saying because I was a volunteer for the school lunch program in the elementary school, and now I'm in the middle school, and part of the time the high school comes there as well because it's all one school system. What happens is that I've seen these girls and boys start out pretty mildly, so to speak. I mean, you always had, the kind that were aggressive or non-aggressive, but I mean, basically mild kids and playing what we consider the typical gender roles. And by the time they get to middle school, it's like a different type of situation. And I'm telling you, something that we have to be very much aware of in the Israelite community now. And it even prioritizes and emphasizes the need for our own schools. The schools today are orienting children to say that it's okay for you to be a homosexual, it's okay for you to be a lesbian, it's okay for you to blend your genders, it's okay for you to be transgender, it's okay for you to be whatever you feel like you want to be. And everybody is now, under some legislation, forced to accept that, even if that's not your belief. So I've seen these young girls, like I said, I'm looking at them like they got to be crazy. And if you hear some of the language, just like the brother said, and he's a teacher, and I'm looking at it from the point of a grandmother being around the kids because I'm there. I'm telling you, the language that comes out of these, it's not only just the boys that need orientation, it's also the girls, and I have to agree with that. We got some cleanup to do. In our communities, that didn't use. I'm not saying that we didn't have homosexuality and whatnot, but it was not at the level it is now, and it has gotten really out of control. Zehu.
Total for that. We'll look into, because I'm hearing a lot about the homosexuality, even in the language that Brother Mercer used about questioning a man's masculinity if he is abusive to a woman, that speaks to him being homosexual. So we'll go back to that because that's a very interesting idea. Muna, what are your thoughts so far?
Ooh, I think the discussion, it's taking form. We're looking at the different ways in which it can manifest, starting from childhood, starting from what I'm hearing, the bad examples in the school systems that are playing out in the way in which the young girls are taking on a level of an aggressive spirit. I'm not in the school system, but I see them, and I have the same questions. Some band their breasts down, they walk, they talk, they move, and they want to take on a masculine spirit. So as we're talking about, are we socializing the boys, and then when young women, some want to act as though they're a boy, then they take on this very spirit that is said to be what men act like. So I think it's all interconnected. So as we continue the discussion, hopefully we'll come to some level of understanding of what's going on and how and what we can do to begin to implement some changes within our community and within our households to hopefully aid in what we're experiencing here. So if I sound a little disoriented, I have babies in and out, so but I'm listening, so I relinquish the mic.
No, total for weighing in, because I can see, I agree with you. The conversation is definitely taking form. We can see some of the moving parts that are coming into play here, and looking now at the aggressiveness of girls. And what brings to mind is the earlier statement, for me, what brings to mind is the earlier statement that Imam made about there being a period of time when abuse against female bodies was not only expected, it was accepted. So I submit for consideration, if are we perhaps seeing a generation that is responding to the previous generation or a previous culture of acceptable aggression, where women were not doing anything about it. The society expected her to be abused and expected her to accept it. And is this a generation of girls that are on the complete other end of the spectrum, and perhaps poorly adapting to that and saying, well, we'll make up for that aggression. We heard earlier Mercy implying that some of these single mothers may be experiencing abuse and the children are seeing that. So the boys are reproducing it. Are the girls responding also and saying, well, I'm not going to be? I don't want, or are they trying to project the image of you can't treat me like that? Before you get it in your head that you can abuse me, I'm going to show you some power that, as Mercy said, she doesn't really have to back it up. She's not really going to be able to weigh him down as much as she's running him, as she may have been vocalizing. I want to bring Yaisha and Nefshi back into the conversation. So, Nefshi, are you there? Can you hear me?
Nefshi? Let me try to see if I can connect her again. I don't know why she dropped off the call.
I'm sorry?
I think Nefshi dropped off the call.
Okay, well, we'll try to get her a little bit later during the course of the show. You can try to call her back in after you answer the question. What are your thoughts so far about what you've heard?
I think everything has a domino effect. I think that I think that a lot of our men are in a very emasculating place in the society. And unfortunately, in order to prove their manhood, they find negative ways, And I'm not saying all of our men. Let me clarify myself because I don't want to be misinterpreted. I think that, we find, I find that a lot of our brothers, they find masculinity. I think at one point, and still now, there's a violence. Unfortunately, it's the violence against each other and their own and their women and all that. And then you have, our men also find masculinity in sex and conceiving children, not necessarily taking care of children. And it appears as though, I guess from the pressures of society, some of them, they having, difficulty with maintaining employment, being self-sufficient, supporting themselves, maybe even educating themselves because of the educational system and some of the things that are against them there. So they find masculinity in, reproducing children, having, violent behavior in other ways, which are not only destructive to others and their families, but destructive to themselves. And that's what my opinion is on the matter. Not that I'm in any way justifying the behavior. I'm just connecting it, And I hope I was clear.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I believe that Mercy will stay on the line with us, and I appreciate you. There are any other men who are out there listening in the listening audience who want to call in, weigh in, and give us some insight about what you may be going through, what you may have observed from others around you, and kind of weigh in on whether or not you feel as if there are certain pressures from society to make you present yourself as more aggressive than perhaps you would have ordinarily. So, again, the number is 319-527-6239. Or if you think that we are just completely tripping and there's nothing wrong with aggression, it's part of being a man, then call in and don't forget to press 1. Emma, I want to explore a little bit these conversations about specifically why girls are gravitating to the boys. What makes girls maybe think that this is okay for boys to be aggressive? So we talked earlier about certain phrases that are normalized in society, like makeup sex. And I've been around, I'm in my 40s, right? And so I've been around quite a few girl talks, and makeup sex is something we giggle behind, and it's something we even talk about looking forward to, and we don't think about the fact that there is some kind of aggression or some kind of bad experience that came first, and then there's this idea where there's conflict and reward, and it's kind of associated in that way, and even like so you kind of make up for the bad part of it. Is that a healthy way of conceptualizing the bad part of it? Do we solve everything with sex? But I'm looking at this phrase of the make-up sex.
Yeah.
Are there other phrases that we could think of, other phrases that we could remember that also might normalize or sanitize or they deactivate the warning systems? Other phrases that we might tell girls to make them not think that it's so bad to see an abusive man.
Mhm. I think that what has happened is that we've also romanticized this sort of makeup sex, which gives it a certain amount of validity for when a man has treated you bad. I know some women, they don't feel that they're being loved unless their man is abusing them, unless he's jealous and want to smack on them and everything like that. They think that that's a form of love. Unfortunately,
right.
that has been the way we have been oriented in this society. No sane people think that is correct. But don't forget, we've been in a masculine society where we've been exposed to people who were violent, where even coming over here on slave ships, we were subjected to violence, and our men could not help us. They could not be our protectors. This is a word that I've heard used tonight, and it's absolutely true. They could not protect us. And, in fact, we even had to keep silent when we were being abused when they weren't in our presence in order to preserve their lives. We put it as a sort of defense mechanism for our survival. And now it's become a part of our culture. And we can't seem to know, we don't seem to know how to get rid of it, you know. It's unfortunate, but this is what we're suffering with. And then we have to think about it, because when you raise sons, especially as a single mother, as I've had to do throughout most of their growing up, you're trying to teach your sons to be assertive, I should say. But then you also have to teach them to protect themselves from a society that not only emasculates them, but is trying to kill them.
Right. Hold on, Emma. We have one of us has a really, really good phone, and we can hear even every exhale and inhale. So if we can mute if you're not speaking, because it's for the listening audience.
It may actually be my phone. Is that better?
You sound fine.
Okay, yeah, because I had you on speakerphone because I was doing something. Does that sound better now?
Yeah, I don't hear the breathing right now.
Okay, then that might have been me. Sorry, the heavy breathing wasn't sexual. It was just that I was heavy breathing. That's all. Anyway, I think that's happened, and unfortunately, if we going back to Torah-based understanding, this would not be the way of our fathers. I'm not saying that we didn't have men who beat their wives. I'm sure that we did. I mean, come on, we're dealing with reality here. But I don't see in any of the instances of our ancient fathers where this seems to have been the case. It seems to have been that the women were respected, in fact, held in very high regard, and were giving the sort of autonomy to do a lot of things freely, And I don't see that. I see that in Western society. I mean, they always show you the picture of the caveman with his club bopping somebody on the head and grabbing the woman by her hair and dragging her somewhere. And I realize that doesn't fit all the models, but certainly when your society is aggressive or aggression is the priority of your society, or what are the top mores, is part of your mores and value system, part of what's customary for you, then it becomes a normal thing to react that way. And unfortunately, our men have come under that, in addition to the fact that they have to fear for their very lives because if they show aggression, they have to fear for their very lives. This kind of living that has to suppress the anger that you feel against people that you feel are powerless can erupt in so many ways. And because we're powerless against the society at large, a lot of times we internalize that violence. That's why our neighborhoods become so violent. This is why our households become so violent. And any young men who are growing up in that kind of culture feel that, many times feel that the way to express themselves is through violence. This is why we have the gangs. This is why we have the players and the dealers and all the rest of that kind of stuff, because we're not allowed. If we were really thinking about aggression and how it would benefit us, we would be going against the society that is oppressing us. But we don't do that. We internalize it, and we go against ourselves. And
that's an excellent point, that we do internalize these aggressions, and we are we're misdirecting it by abusing our spouses. And we're actually at the 9 o'clock hour already, and I wanted to propose something, but I found out, or I've been informed, that Ima Yehudi is in the building. So,
oh, wonderful.
I know. I want to give her an opportunity to weigh in a little bit.
Oh,
definitely. And I'll just have to put a note to myself what I wanted to bring out, and then go back into rotation. So, Ima Yehudi, welcome to the conversation. We always love to have you. Do you have any thoughts about whether or not we are socializing our boys and men to be aggressive?
Oh, first of all, shalom, and thank you for inviting me. And shalom, Ima Naami. And greetings to you and all the panel. Ooh, that's a good one. Come back to me. Let me think on it. Let me hear some more opinions and facts on it, and I will gladly to reply. I appreciate it. Okay? I'll put myself on mute.
No problem. Make yourself at home. You know where everything is.
Let me get a little glass of wine then. Okay.
Tonight's conversation is sponsored by the Yummy Cottage, so go ahead and get some vegan treats in the fridge. You're good. It reminds me a little bit. I was thinking about what kind of phrases we have floating around society that may encourage or make us desensitize us to some of these otherwise these cues that we otherwise would pick up on in terms of aggression, but Ima went in such great directions, bringing in the slavery component, that historical memory that we may have about that, and the repercussions of disempowerment from slavery. I was thinking, however, that last year, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, when we were talking about domesticity, where women were overly submissive, not because they truly felt or truly adhered to any of this ideology that made them want to be submissive, but rather they understood their circumstances and found another kind of survival strategy in their marriages and the ways the society was conceptualizing them at the time. During that study, we came across something called domestic discipline, where the men spanked their women like children, and it was advertised in such a way. Mona, do you remember that study? What are your thoughts about the way society kind of nurtures an environment for aggression against girls and women?
I think I still get not so nice replies off of that one. We did some research on that. I was shocked to see that actually exists, and even more troubled by the women who advocated for it. They said that they want it. They don't know how to control themselves or stay in line, and so they need the man to beat them in prescribed ways that they agree upon. But she agrees with it. So this thought of some women possibly being complicit with the abuse or victimization of themselves has some validity to it. I mean, it depends on the domestic discipline is something that before they actually start, they're saying, hey, you can do this thing. But the person who's getting beat on, there comes a point in time where one, and I know I'm probably going to get some heat about this, but anything that we do, if we continue to allow ourselves to be abused, then we continue to allow ourselves to be a victim, right? And so we're talking about power, we're talking about the misuse of power, we're talking about coming into a space where we're ready and willing to take back our power. And so, I know I probably forgot the initial question. Oh, yes, the domestic discipline. I'm sorry, y'all. Today has been a wild day. But the domestic discipline is wild. It is a thing in both the melanated and non-melanated community. And it's just a whole lot of stuff floating around out there that we need to consider while we're having these conversations. And let people know that, abuse of any kind, physical abuse, because it's not only physical violence. You can be violent with your words. There's emotional abuse, mental abuse, exploitation of the individual in different ways, and you just use your energy to intimidate people, and you may never lay a hand on them. You know what I'm saying? But it's the threat of laying your hand on them. True. All of these things are wrong. They're an abuse of power, they're exploitation of power, and it causes issues like Sister Aisha was saying. It's a domino effect. And so we need to put that on the front table, because somebody might be in the cut like, but I never hit you, though. Somebody might be listening right now, and she looking at him. He's like, I ain't never hit you, though. And in her mind, always flinch like he's going to hit her. He always approaches like he's going to hit her, and he uses the threat of violence. I would also like to say that she uses the threat of violence. You have some men who won't come out. As Mercy is saying, the tables are twisted, and the female is the one who's the aggressor. She's the one who's the abuser. And we are, just to keep it balanced, I think we talked about that before, but some men are embarrassed to come out and say, because society socializes the man to be the aggressor, some men are really embarrassed to come out and say that the feminine principle is abusing him.
Right.
And so, I wanted to say that and relinquish the mic.
Sort of for introducing that side of the coin, because there is that, and it still ties in to the conversation of, are we socializing our voice and meant to be aggressive? Very often when we're trying to talk about one side, we get irritated when somebody says, but the girls are doing it too. But it's important, in this case, it's important to see that, okay, when the women are doing it, because we have socialized our men to think that there is a blight against their masculinity if they don't perform in a particular way, that it prevents them from change or reporting, or as Nefshi brought out earlier, attending to those very meager resources that there are for help anyway. If there is help on how not to be abusive or not to be abused, he's discouraged from attending to those things. I want to bring Aisha into the conversation, but I was asking before about languages or phrases that we have as a society that might address this idea, why are girls accepting certain behaviors? I know that when I was growing up, and I don't know if this was anybody else's experience, but we were told that if a boy put gum in our hair, or pulled our hair, or hit us and ran away, or took our hats, or took our played in our hair, it was because he liked us. And so little girls are told from a very young age that physical aggression from a boy was not something to be upset about. Don't get upset. He's just doing that because he likes you. And so you have young girls being told that abuse equals attraction or abuse equals affection, and not to be upset about it. So the question is, how do these little girls grow up to think that if they hit you, that must mean that he likes me, when we told them in kindergarten that if he hit you, it's because he likes you? Would she forget that in high school? Aisha, what are your thoughts?
Well, you're not far removed. Can you hear me, Klika?
I can hear you.
Okay, you're not far removed, because I just told a grown Israelite today that he made the statement, well, if I don't hit a woman, I don't curse a woman, I don't, commit adultery, how could she not want to be with me? So we have not only from kindergarten, but we have throughout the generations pretty much said, that, if things have gotten so desperate that on both sides, for the male and the female, we have pushed the idea that unless it gets to the extreme, it really ain't that bad. And I understand where it comes from. It comes from our degraded state we've lived in this society, you know, and we get this whole idea. First thing, abuse doesn't necessarily start from even the physical. Like Imuna said, it starts from words at times. Intimidation. It could be as simple as I had a booklet years ago. It could even be as simple as, well, if you don't do what I say, I'm not going to give you this money. Or a man, you know, you and them get into an argument, and I'm going to leave you stranded here in the street, and I'm going to drive off. And women have done it too. I know, me being a person of Caribbean heritage, I've known women who sponsored men to this country and then threatened not to give them their papers, you know, and use that as leverage, and vice versa. Men have done it to women too. So all these things are abusive. So, you know, we even though we talk about the European and their oppression against us, we have internalized a lot of this stuff and, you know, oppressed each other, and not only in the Israelite community, but in other communities as well. So I definitely understand that, you know, you're right. In kindergarten, preschool, oh, he likes you, so that's why he's picking on you, he's bullying you, oh, you guys must like each other. The behavior was not corrected then. So as the child grows up, they think that this type of thing is acceptable. And then, you know, what we've done as Israelites, well, you better hit him back. So now you have some women who don't have a problem hitting men back or fighting men. But we all know, and I'm not saying there are some women who could take a man, because I've seen it. But more than likely, most women cannot fight a man, not a regular-sized man. So, you know, this whole idea of telling her, well, you hit him back, and they're fighting constantly, and it's cute. But as the years go by and they stay in that relationship, even though it may seem like, as Ema said, an animal lust attraction, but when they start to have children, okay, you're going to be fighting in front of the children. The children are like sponges. They absorb everything. And I will say, even though this is a movie that I'm about to quote, it is not real life, I would say The Color Purple said it all. You know, you had the Harpo and I think Oprah played Miss Sophia. They fought back and forth. They was in love with each other, but eventually they had to let each other go. And it was through their violent relationship that, you know, their whole family life became very dysfunctional. And I think at some point, Oprah, who played Miss Sophia, ends up, because she couldn't control her anger in an oppressive Southern, I don't know if that was the antebellum, Ema will correct me, but the antebellum period or whatever, she ends up in prison. Right. And, you know, and the thing about it is that, but even with the other two characters, Mr. and the one that Whoopi Goldberg plays, Celie, where she was being abused in many different ways, sexually, physically, everything. Even her oppression, her pursuit for happiness, everything was being taken from the Celie character. But once again, when Harpo went and complained to her about Miss Sophia, she said, well, beat her. Because, she, you know, even though she's being abused, she still advocated for another woman to be abused. Because this has become the pattern of what was going on. And I hate to use a movie as an example because that's not real life. However, it was a prime example. Alice Walker, and I didn't appreciate the homosexual nuances that was in the movie, but I'll say this. She did depict what went on, what goes on in a black society. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Put up to that. I know that you were hesitant to bring out these media spaces, but the fact is that we see a lot of encouraging or a lot of reinforcing of certain masculine images in media spaces, and we see the abuses of female body in these media spaces. The Color Purple, of course, is based off of a book by the same name, and we find that a lot of things are canonized in our literature, and we know that these are factors in our community and in society at large. Another phrase that comes to mind is boys will be boys. Leave him alone. That's what boys do. And so there's this idea that we are being very permissive. This other conversation about culture, that we have a culture of permissiveness that expects boys to do these things, so we don't discipline. The boys don't meet consequences for bad behavior. Earlier what Mercy was saying, you're a punk, you're a homosexual, but other things are, you're a girl. Don't be a girl. So, like, the worst thing you could possibly be is a girl. Once you along the list of things you should never be is a girl. So does that lend to getting into the men's, or a little boy or boy to the men, this idea that there's some kind of devaluation in the feminine body? You don't want to do that. There's something about her that men are this and women are that thing. Don't do that. It's part of the insult. It's part of the put down the woman. So are we contributing to this mentality, how the man conceptualizes the female body? Do we say boys being boys? Are we helping to give a permissive space where they think it's okay to abuse? When we say to little girls, he hits you, it's because he likes you. What other ways is society participating in creating this culture of abuse? Again, we're in the middle of October, or we're in the first weeks of October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and this is a very, very important, it's a very sad space that we're in. We are in the midst of the Me Too movement of all of these abused bodies. We talked just last week about how this affects the children. That when we talk about domestic violence, we're talking about violence in the home and everybody that's in that home. And so this is why we're having this conversation. If you're just joining us, we're already past the 9 o'clock hour. I'm not sure if we have any time, so we may be ending at 10 o'clock this evening. So if you haven't already called in, the number is 319-527-6239, and you need to press 1 in order for us to put you in the host queue so you can join the conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Ima Yehudi, who has joined us. And now that you've had a little bit of time to hear the thoughts of the other people on the panel and get a sense of what the conversation is about, you're welcome to join in and share your thoughts. The mic is yours.
Shalom. Shalom, shalom. I want to kind of integrate what Ima Naani, shalom, Yaisha, shalom, and Yaisha and Imuna has said. I had a lot of thought listening to all of you speaking. And I'm going to speak on my experiences. I think sometimes the men of the family may not know what the nurturing aspect of what a man should do, where it carries on to the son. Because I've had that where God, little boy pulled my hair. Oh, they just like you. One even took a rock and threw it in a puddle and got my dress and everything all wet. Well, I beat him up, But it has to be talked about. What I mean is, I had the experience where the uncles talked, the dad talked, and I don't think men understood how to be men nurturing. Nowadays it's like if a young boy seems to be caring towards a little, let's say he's 6 and she's 5. Okay, they're friends, they're in class, and he talks to her. Maybe something, he's a little feminine. Okay, because he's not pulling the hair and he's not pushing her down and he's not being aggressive. Because they didn't know how men didn't have to be aggressive that way towards women. I think, like she said, part of the slavery aspect, what Imuna and also what Yaisha said about the movie, and then Mauna with her statement. I know for a fact that my ex had physically torn my blouse off. I was about to hit him, but I didn't. But I got, where was he taught? And I'm saying this as an experience. It's nothing new under the sun. Maybe it'll help someone. I started to shoot him. Seriously. And some said no. Because I didn't grow up that way. I was taught and through example that men aren't supposed to put their hands on women. but I got involved with someone that was close to that, and there was residuals from that. So how do we change and navigate with our young men as well as our daughters, where I say daughters, and young women, to change their ideology of what a relationship, how do we conduct ourselves between a female and a male? Where does it start when they're little? How do we navigate those? These are the questions I'm asking. How do you navigate that? Do you say that this little boy, if he's treating her nice, tying up her shoe or opening the door for her or speaking nice words or you look nice, is he classified as being too feminine or not aggressive enough? They have a thing now that the girls are playing with boy toys and vice versa. Some parents are getting, problems with that. So where do you draw the line? How do you differentiate? This is the one, this is the female, this is what she does, and this is the male. So we got all these solutions, but where do we start to differentiate and help these young people navigate of how to conduct themselves? Shalom, that's all I have to say.
Definitely, I would say that for myself, I would say that one of the ways that we begin to navigate that is by not giving, one of the things we said was that they're reproducing what they see. So going back to giving them better examples and looking at the language that we use. Children, I believe it was Aisha who said the children are like sponges. And so what we say to them matters. What we show them matters. What we encourage in them matters. And do we still have him on the line?
Yes, Kane, I'm here.
I'm going to do me a favor. Do my check. Call me, and I need you to go ahead and weigh in now. I'm going to step away. Can you answer the questions that Ima Yehudi was forwarding? Like, where do we go from here? How do we deal with the aggression?
I mean, I think Ima was leaning towards, socialization of the children. I think that there's merit to it. In this space and time, you want to blur all of the lines, but when you're coloring, you blur all the lines, you end up with a mess. And so, some lines are not hard lines where if the man is not there, then the feminine principle doesn't know what to do. But some lines, when you mess with them, for instance, what we're experiencing with a lot of the masculine principle is their innate role to be a provider. And if they don't have the capacity, they don't have the agency, they don't have the ability to go out because of the situation, spaces that we're in, that is frustrating. You know what I'm saying? For some. Mm-hmm. And so when we understand how we're hardwired, some things are hardwired, some things we can play around with. And so even I have girls and a little boy, and he's aware, and they're aware of the spaces where this is what the masculine principle does and this is what the feminine principle does, and this is what the responsibilities that we can share. Because if everybody thinks they can do everybody else's job, then, it doesn't flow the way it's supposed to flow. So I would say, for me, I would be afraid of, letting people know about roles. I know everyone, I don't want roles. Roles are what it is, man. You know what I mean? Roles, we need roles so that everyone can know what it is that they should be doing, need to be doing. And I'm not talking about, he can't wash his own clothes, you know what I'm saying? Or you can't wash the dishes. That's not what I'm talking about. But in order for her to do what she needs to do, the masculine principle needs to know that he needs to do what he used to do. And so he can't sit around if he's amongst a lot of feminine principles. He can't sit around and mimic them. And this is what I see when Mercy brought up single motherhood. In some spaces, it's the male child being allowed to sit around and do all the things that the females in the space are doing. And sometimes you're like, wow, he has mirrored that energy so well that he thinks that he's even more feminine than the female.
Exactly.
And so you have to, you see what I'm saying? And because there, either whether or not there was no representation or it wasn't safe to be a representation of what a man is. And so, you know, it's because sometimes that happens as well. Like, well, I don't want to be a man like that man because look what happened to him. And then some men turn to a space where they feel non-quote threatening. And when they'll be non-threatening, you see some really huge, muscular men, and then you're like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what? You know, psychologically, that's something psychologically that's happening with them. You know, and so it's not even, it's so many levels to this thing. It's so many levels to this thing. But I will go ahead and relinquish the mic. I'm going to have to pass Sister Ayana in at this point. So I think that's Iman Judith, if you would like to speak at this time.
I'm going to make a quick comment. I agree with what you're saying. It has to be, well, I'm not going to speak for Iman because we'll always go back in the day. We see the difference because, like Imuna said, even though my son was raised around women, he did have the masculine quality, and he had even the masculine sensitive quality. And that's only because he had to be shown an example. We couldn't teach it. He could do everything we could do, cook, clean, this, that, and the other. But my mother would always say, just because you're a man, you have to learn to do these things. Suppose your wife, when you get married, gets sick. She would say that. Or the uncle would say, well, this is, you need to learn this. You need to learn that. The role was defined. Was it perfect? No, not. But at least was shown the difference in how a female acts and how a man acts. So this is what I'm pushing for, or I have a soft spot of our young people and the way that they're growing up now. They have no form of instruction in their household. A lot of them don't.
Exactly.
So you got that woman who feels that I'm needed if I'm abused some kind of way, either physically or verbally. Or a man thinking to be a man to verbally or physically abuse that woman. So it's so confusing, and it's such a sickening thing. How do you straighten that out? How do you get to people to understand that that's not the way that our people, our culture? How do we get away from that? Zayla.
Yeah, may I say a word or two?
Absolutely. I want to. This is a great conversation. I definitely want to bring you into it. Also, we do have a caller holding. I want to bring that person in, but I will. Ima, do you want to speak first and then go to the caller?
No, by all means, let the caller speak first. Bavakasha.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to let the caller speak, but I want to also just put on the table because we're already nearing down to the 9:30 mark, and we may or may not have overtime. I don't know yet. But we talked already about culture and how society plays into it. We spoke earlier about how culture sometimes reinforces ideas of machismo and the like, and other ideas of masculinity, even toxic masculinity. I want to talk, after we talk to the caller and after we talk to Ima, maybe look at some of the doctrine. Ima already told us that Torah and the Tanakh does not encourage abuses against the female body that we can see or that we have on record, but instead it shows a great deal of respect and agency and autonomy with the women. So what is it about? Are there certain doctrines, either from our Hebraic conversations or in other faith traditions, that also reinforce some kinds of this toxic masculine identity, where men feel like they have to be aggressive or they have permission to be aggressive against female bodies, or they feel entitled to their bodies, and to whatever they want to impart on the woman. Does some religious or faith traditions encourage that? So by permission of the elder, we're going to go to the phone lines and welcome Brother Mercy back to the conversation.
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, Brother Mercy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, my thing is this. I mean, we have to acknowledge slavery, and we have to look at. There's definitely some mental and some social, some emotional baggage that we carry from slavery, because that's what has happened in the past, and we still carry on it today. And I think our men. I don't think our men are aggressive. That's just. I just don't think that. I think our men have so many. I mean, I'm considered successful. In a lot of ways, but I've endured a lot of persecution. A lot of twisted. I mean, even I was just pulled over by the police the other day. You know what I'm saying? And the way he treated me was just. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If I was aggressive, I probably wouldn't be talking to you on the phone right now. You know what I'm saying? So you can't be aggressive and stay alive as a black man. You just can't do it. I mean, I would say you could be aggressive and just, and that may be in your own home and maybe hitting on your woman. I don't know. But to me, it's so short-lived. Even with these football players, they're getting in trouble by hitting their women. They losing their contracts. I mean, it's real big. I mean, so to say that you're just going to keep hitting on people and getting away with it, I'm not saying everybody gets caught, but I'm just saying it's so like our men are like so ostracized. I mean, even I just feel like it's so unfair the way the system is towards our men, and for us to paint a picture of them being aggressive, I just feel like we just fall into the white man's trap, because I don't see that. I just do not see that. Now, I'm telling you about that little boy, right? That little boy that was hitting them little girls, but his father was in jail. I forgot to tell you that piece. His father was in jail. So, I mean, his father, he got a bad example. He doesn't have a good example. So I'm not excusing his behavior by any means. But I'm just saying that I had to talk to that young man to explain that his behavior was unacceptable. And what I'm trying to say is a lot of our men don't have those. And I'm here to make an excuse for the young man. I'm just saying a man, sometimes a man needs a man to talk to, because if they don't, they'll fall into the trap. Because there's a trap set for our young men out here. And if you think you're going to just keep putting your hands on people and keep breaking the law, you think you're going to get away with it. I mean, we're the most incarcerated people on the planet. Black people are the most incarcerated people. So we're getting caught. So it ain't like we're not getting caught. We're getting caught. So the idea
before I let you go on that, because Brother Mercy, what I hear you going into is the space of the man is overly taxed. The man is going through whatever. We already went over that. Yes, we all acknowledge that the melanated body, male and female, are going through particular issues that no other group is in this country. But that's not changing the statistics of the fact that men are being abusive. That's a fact. And saying that, they went through slavery, we all went through slavery, went through slavery too. So that doesn't give that. That doesn't mean it's not happening, because you got pulled over, and my sister-in-law got pulled over, and we understand that the melanated bodies are being abused. We talked about that. This may be one of the contributing factors that he's frustrated and disempowered in all these other spaces. So he comes and does this thing. The fact is that he's coming home and doing this thing, and we don't want to move away from that fact to go and look at the factors that are contributing to the why. But we're looking right now at the that, and we're talking about the fact that society does find ways to socialize men and boys. Now, we're talking about our men and boys because this is our community conversation, but this is across the board. Non-melanated
Can I say something real quick?
Boys and men are not, while I'm speaking, boys and men.
No, I'm saying when you finish. I'm sorry, when you finish.
Yes, when I finish, you can speak. Across the board, boys and men are socialized in this way because society expects for boys to have particular temperaments, to do particular behaviors. Gladiators, that's not us. That the Titans, that's not us. This other type of abusing the Greeks and the like, that's not us. So it's not something that is coming from us. But the fact is that we carry notions of masculinity. We reproduce notions of masculinity. We sell these ideas to our boys, and then when we act them out, we don't know where it came from. So we're looking at what responsibility do we have and what we are telling our men and boys, or what we're giving permission to our men and boys, what we're reproducing with our men and boys that is contributing to this climate of abuse. And once we're honest about those things, then we can work on solutions. Do we stop telling little girls it's okay that he hit you? It means he likes you. Do we stop telling our boys that it's you and you don't cry, you suck everything up, you hit things when you're upset? That these types of expressions are acceptable, violent expressions are acceptable. Look, consider this, and I'm putting this to the panel and to you, and then off. We have men and boys who will devalue the female by saying, "Oh, she's emotional," but they don't consider, which means they don't consider things like anger an emotion. They don't consider violence an emotion. Otherwise, they would have to accept that they too are emotional, because these are emotions. But because these are emotions, they get associated with masculinity, they're not considered emotional. Emotional is the realm for the woman. So those are the things that this conversation is about. So I'm going to end there so that you can say what you want to say, the panel can respond to you, and we can get back to Ima's comment. So if you can make it brief so we can continue. We're almost at the 10 o'clock hour. I'm willing to, I'm ready to hear your answer, Mercy.
Yeah, all I was getting to is that there is a trap being set for our young men. If you socialize our young men the way you're talking about, it's a trap in our society that saying it's okay if you hit your women and all that. That creates a pattern. That's a pipeline to the jail system. That's all I was simply saying. So that's all I was saying.
There's actually an important kind of conversation happening on the 11th of this month about the poverty to pipeline, a poverty to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. We're going to have that on the 11th, I think, in Midtown. So that's a good point, Mercy. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Sal, do we have any other callers holding?
No other callers at this time.
Great. So, not great. You can always call in. The number here is 319-527-6239. I see that you're all listening. I really appreciate that. We'll probably get some great comments and feedback once we go on the YouTube side. But for now, you're always welcome to press 1 and join the conversation. Mercy holding it down for the listening audience. So in the meantime, I'm going to turn the mic over to Ima Naomi, who has been patiently waiting to speak.
Yes, I have to agree with Brother Mercy in that having raised boys and understanding from them telling me how they felt. And I don't know whether we realize just how difficult it is to be under this constant scrutiny of who you are. I've seen Israelite women hold their pocketbooks when an Israelite man goes by. You know what I mean? When you're under that kind of constant scrutiny, and I'm not saying that justifies or gives an excuse to men who abuse their women. I found something interesting because now they're pushing this transgender thing, and everybody is everybody, and you are, who you feel like you want to be, and all that in the schools. I'm witnessing this. But I heard an interesting study come out a couple of weeks ago where they say that while transgender people may alter their genitalia or whatever, there's something that they're missing about the feminine or the masculine principle. There are actually 161 cells that differentiate, that are different from in a man and a woman. There's at least 161 that they've identified that are definitely different, that establish femininity or masculinity, regardless of what the people show on the outside, what they say they feel. I've always been a woman or I've always been a man. That there are cells in there, and when we look at it from a Torah perspective, we realize that Yah made it different these two entities are supposed to complement each other. This woman is brought in the word of English is helpmeet. In other words, she's supposed to be his help. She's not supposed to be his sparring partner or anything like that. She's coming there to help him to govern the earth. I think what we have to do these days is that we're going to have to reestablish, and I've heard this, I've already suggested, reestablish the roles of men and women as we define them, rather than the way the society defines them. And let it be understood that certain the behaviors sometimes even of the larger society or the pervasiveness of that society cannot invade our communities and cause us how to act. Now, I realize that this would be a very bold undertaking because we have so many in our community who are not Torah-centered or who may not adopt that view, and this is what our children have to navigate through. But we need to think about that. And the funny thing about it is that I remember even when I was growing up, even though domestic violence took place and whatnot like that, it was frowned upon in our society because we always had the differentiation that we were not like the other society. Our men were taught manners, they were taught, industriousness and stuff like that. We're in this society now, does not always promote that because of their particular their particular agenda for mixing genders and everything is everything, I think definitely as Israelites we're going to have to change that culture. And I don't always agree with, I've seen some of these Israelite camps out here who promote the thing where the men are the macho and they want to whip on their women to prove that. I'm not promoting that at all, not even one iota. However, I do think that men and women's roles need to be more clearly defined, and we need to start it. We have to start somewhere. So we need to do that in our community. Zehu.
Jane, so that's for that. You know me, I'm all about biblical femininity, so you singing my song right there. Yaisha, do we have Nefshi back on the line?
I'm here. I've been listening to you.
Oh,
good.
Nefshi,
So
you
Nefshi,
there?
have you.
Oh, my
yes,
sweetheart,
I'm
my
here.
sweet daughter. My sweet daughter.
Shalom, Ima.
Shalom,
shalom.
sweetie. Listen, we can't take up the time, but I'll kiss on you later.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I'm just listening. Everyone is making such a wonderful point. I love it because being a teacher in the education system, I diffuse that if he hits you, no, you're wrong. You don't do that. You got timeout. I don't advocate for that. He hit you. He like you. No, you're a boy. You're a girl, and that's that. And I walk into my job in my culture, and my expectation is high. I do try to keep the language on equal ground so that I reach and get the children, but most of all have a bigger impression on my coworkers so that they understand that this is how it's supposed to be despite what you may think. And I always put Torah in it. Oh, I didn't mean to interject.
Yeah,
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And that's also one of the things that's very important. How we present ourselves sends a message to those around us what's acceptable and not acceptable for us. And if we all kind of stood in honor and integrity in our own spaces, then we could probably change the narrative just one person at a time. The question that I have on the table, and I'm going to go ahead and try to round robin this question. We talked earlier about culture and how some cultures create an environment that allows for or expects certain masculine behaviors and kind of reinforces it for that reason. Are there any doctrines? Again, we're not talking about the actual, authentic, genuine Hebrew culture, but some interpretations as we find it in faith traditions or even in some Hebrew interpretations of the culture that also may create a space where men think they have permission to be abusive or maybe even do we find that there are men who are challenging the masculinity of other men if they don't present in a particular way? This language of being a simp comes into play. I think someone gave an example of if you tied your girlfriend's shoes or if you did something affectionate for her, all of a sudden then your masculinity should be called into question by other masculine principles.
Oh, yeah.
So next, Jesus, I have you. Do you want to build on that question?
I will base it, sort of for asking me, on my experience in my workplace. I have a lot of parents from South America, and they advocate for the men and this whole machismo thing. And it's present in the children, in the male children especially. And like I said prior, my style, my living, my culture, the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, whom I serve, is present always. And that's what you'll get when you come this way. I do not feminize the male children, but what I do put before them is, you know what you should be doing, and I try to leave it right or wrong so that it does not cross that that man-made church and state doctrine they have in place. There's a lot of things that I try to bring forward so that there's never a misunderstanding.
Salon?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
This is
Okay.
Sister Aisha. Can I speak? Is it
Well,
possible?
I was just about to call you. I was just about to call you. I was just about to ask you to weigh in on.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just
Go
about to
ahead.
ask you to weigh in on is there anything that in your experience or in your time or observation that you have seen that the certain doctrines and certain faith traditions might create a climate where the man feels that he has permission or that he has to perform aggressively or maybe more abusively than he would ordinarily do because there's this fear of other men questioning his masculinity and creating it. So we have this toxic masculinity being encouraged by these traditions. Mm-hmm.
Well, I came out of one of those cultures. My parents are both from Guyana, South America, and I know. I mean, some things now it sounds preposterous now, but growing up, it would be nothing for a man in our family to say, "Oh, let me give you 2 slaps if you don't shut up, woman." You know that I was raised with that. You know, and everybody would laugh. I remember, and then even as a man, let's say if a man appeared to be a little henpecked, you would say in the American culture, they would refer to him as an anti-man, which means he was faggot. I was raised with that. I mean, my family doesn't talk like that anymore because they've been oriented to American society, which is more politically correct. But I know when I was a child, that would be general talk. And I remember, just in general, you don't wear the pants in your household. It was, people talk about South American culture, even though my family were, black people from South America, from Guyana. You found a lot of that type of machismo, macho-ness, especially, when they first immigrated here. I find that, and this was reinforced. Remember, they were a British colony at one point, and a lot of the European, even though people felt that the British oppression was somewhat better than the American slavery that went on, it was slavery nonetheless. And the Europeans were dangerous people. They were very violent people. And we were orientated. I don't know if in our ancient days we were violent. I mean, I know I read in the Torah about us, some of us being violent. But we were definitely, when we were brought here, no matter where we ended up, be it America, the Caribbean, South America, wherever, we were definitely oppressed and being held by a very violent people. So we were orientated, and we mimicked a lot of the behavior that was being demonstrated against us. And then we turned around and used it against each other. And then this now got misinterpreted as black culture. So now the media outlets and other outlets are like, portraying us as violent people, and they're gonna get mad, or even for the women, she's gonna get sister girl, she gonna tear it up in here, like we automatically got stereotyped with this, with these characteristics that may not have necessarily been us had we have been allowed to develop in a better environment. And this now has become Black culture. Even when you see on some of these reality shows, white people even imitating us and thinking that it's funny, and I don't necessarily feel that, unfortunately that has become our culture, but I don't necessarily feel as though it has. And I wanted to direct something towards the brother, I think his name is Brother Mercy, that spoke. Mm-hmm. In getting understanding on why why our men may be socialized to be aggressive, or why our women even are now aggressive, because some of our women are very aggressive. I've seen it. But the thing about it is, in getting understanding doesn't mean that we're pointing the finger. We're trying to get understanding to find out why and to improve ourselves and our communities. And what I have found, especially in the conscious community, is that in order to, like some of the brothers that are teaching on YouTube, on these DVDs, and I'm not going to call any names, but in order to get to, to defend the Black man and his plight, and I get that, they have decided now to lay blame on the Black woman now, because she's the reason why, she has joined on with the white man. She's done this, she's done that. And I mean, when we get to the point of laying blame, it's not improving us, it's not helping us. I understand that a lot of our brothers have been incarcerated. I watched a documentary on CNN called America in Jail, where they talked about the prison system being a financial institution, it being on the stock market, totally targeted to jailing our men. That's the modern day slavery, as Michelle Alexander wrote in the New Jim Crow, and I'm well aware that, and I'm sure most people on this line, because we have an educated group on this line, are very much aware of all these things. And the rising rate amongst Black women going to prison, which people aren't really paying attention to that. But that's another thing that people think that only the Black men are going to jail, and that's not true. Our women, there's an increased rate of that, and our children in the, juvenile prison industrial complex, So as I said to Ema many years ago, and she agreed, when a people go into captivity, it is not just the man or the woman. It's the man, the woman, and the children. And in trying to get understanding, we can't be, yes, a lot of us, some of us have parents who have been incarcerated. Some of us have other family members. I know Ema's in the prison ministry. However, as we first, concluded in the beginning, these are still choices that we're making. So in trying to get understanding, we have to stop making these choices that are landing us in prison, that are having us beat up on our spouses, whether it be the woman beating up on her husband or disrespecting him publicly or privately, or the man beating up on his wife. We have to stop making these excuses, and try to come together as a community to do better. And I'm just going to leave it there. Dehu.
Well said, well said.
Sort of for that, we got into the space that I was asking about, this idea that we talked about the culture, and now we're looking at faith traditions in our Hebrew culture, as well as in other faith traditions. We have complaints from the Islam community that there are masculine imperatives that give this kind of sense that they can abuse female bodies. Not that there's anything in the Quran that says go out there and beat your woman necessarily, but that because there's this idea of the propertyhood of the woman, that you get in many Abrahamic faith traditions, the idea that the woman is a type of property, which is interesting because if we really, I would submit that for study, that where this word property is being translated, there's also the idea of inheritance, that she is an inheritance, that she is not a property in terms of like your car, perhaps, but something that you seek for. What you want. This is a reward. She's a reward for you. She's your inheritance. But it gets kind of beaten down or into this idea of property, and so the pursuits or the way she's understood gets interpreted differently. And again, so language matters. Language matters. This idea. I'm getting updates on how the show is going, and so that's great. So I want to hear more from the panel about maybe their experiences with not necessarily just our faith tradition, but other faith traditions that might also lend itself to some of this abusive behavior. That yes, society is playing a role, and yes, certain cultures are playing a role, but is the misinterpretation of Abrahamic imperatives or staples or pillars also contributing to this idea that allow men a space to maybe exploit the feminine principle and abuse her? We know, for example, there was a period of time in American history where women didn't have a legal identity if she was married. I believe it was under Kovachev that if she was married, the husband was the only one that had a legal identity. She didn't legally exist. So to the extent that if she committed a crime, she couldn't be prosecuted because she literally didn't exist. She couldn't buy anything, she couldn't sell anything, she couldn't do anything because on paper she was not a person. She was the man was a person, she was under him. So everything fell under his domain. And so and again, that's all part of the domesticity study that we did a few years ago. And so what kinds of ideas or ideologies and theologies are we confronted with that might help to contribute to this? And so I'm going to turn this over to Amuna. We are reaching the 10 o'clock hour, so if you haven't already called in, the number is 319-527-6239. If you press 1, you can enter into the conversation. If we get to the 10 o'clock hour and you have not called in, you will not be able to listen to the show. And as you can tell, it's a very interesting show, and we have a lot of women who are talking. I think we have another caller, Brother Gad. Okay, so I think we have Brother Gad on the line who would like to chime in and to weigh in. So we have 1 minute to the 10 o'clock hour. Don't forget to press 1. We're going to invite Brother Gad into the conversation, and then we'll go to Amuna. Mm-hmm. The mic is yours.
Brother Gad, you have to unmute yourself to speak.
Salika, you can hear me, sis?
Yes, we can hear. Conversation.
Okay, yeah. Well, let me start by saying all praise, honor, and glory to the mighty Yahweh, Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Greetings to the family, especially to the elders. I ask you with the elders' permission if I may say some words.
Came.
Okay, I'm glad. Salika, I'm sorry?
I said, Ain Navar.
Okay. I began writing a book concerning some of these same things here and prayed to the Most High for the money and time where I could finish it out, because I have spoken on some of these things to our good sister Aisha and others. Some of the sisters don't agree with, others they do, but this is a topic that's, from what I've seen, one of the most controversial. And it concerns me because what I had to live, which in some of my life, it's still affecting our community today. As I told Aisha, some of the things I had to experience, even though I know she doesn't agree with some of it, I actually did live. For example, when it comes to this topic here about the men being aggressive, I have sat and I've listened to sisters saying for over 20 years about why is it that when it comes to, the quote-unquote thug guy, he seems to be the most desirable amongst our women than the one who's humble like me. Like I've had to say to me, terms like, nerdy nigga, get rid of the glasses, you look like Urkel, mama's boy, punk, or boring. And, no other ways to say that and by my own. And yes, of course, I took offense to that. I don't even like the word nerd anymore based on the fact that I was called that all my life. To me, the word nerd is just as bad as the word nigga. But I say this to say that it's hard when you, are quote-unquote African-American, when, Israelites are living in the so-called America for so many reasons. And as I've told sisters, it's not the women that's the biggest target. It's the men that are the biggest target. When they do stop and frisk, they stop men. Okay, when they shoot, when they get gunning you down, it's mainly men. The prison system is full of men. And a lot of women, they don't realize that. Me growing up, some of the stuff that I was taught with things like, man's not supposed to cry. If he cries, he doesn't have a right to express his feelings, his emotions. And so, certain things that we were told as men have crippled both the mind, body, and also the mind, body, and spirit. I wish that, there was ways that we could have this kind of talks more often because I know that if we communicate these things more, it's going to help us as not just as a community, but as a nation all around this world. I certainly know this, and I know some of this as well. Just to give a quick example. On my mother's side, my grandmother had 8 children, and out of 8 children, 5 were girls, but then all the girls had babies. I started changing pampers at the young age of 7. My mother's sisters, they partied all the time, and when they went out partying, I was inside taking care of the children, and this was sometimes 2 at a time, girls and boys. All right, so yes, I changed pampers, rocked them to sleep, the whole 9 at the young age of 7. When the ladies had their, menstrual cycles, yes, this brother Gavin just got in the past at the store, I still do the same thing to this very day. A short time later, we moved to the South, and my grandparents, may God rest their souls, they gave us what I call old school military training. But they had strict rules. Number one, because grandma was born in South Carolina. May God rest their souls. Number one rule was to put God first. Number 2, you had to go to church before you went outside, and if you didn't go to church, you couldn't even go outside. Grandma's rule for the kitchen, when she cooked, we had to clean, and we had to learn how to cook. So I thank Grandma today because of her, I enjoy cooking, doing laundry, and I love to iron. Between her and Grandpa, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't use drugs, I don't like clubs, I don't waste the day with violent music, vegan/vegetarian, and I love romance. I'm saying because of them and because of the way they brought us up, And, in this society, even though I know that those are qualities that, are positive, it was the opposite reaction that, that I was given. And it bothers me that it's like a book called Men Cry in the Dark by Michael Basin. A lot of brothers like myself have cried in the dark because there's very little meetings and conversations about this topic where any brothers are recognized as good ones and being loved, appreciated, and supported, and I find that to be unfair. You know what I mean? And part of my prayers to y'all every week is that we can have, both Old and New Testament Israelites come together. As the answer is Zephaniah 2:1, gather you together, a nation not desired. We need to spend some less time, looking for reasons to not talk, less time looking for reasons to dislike and hate each other, and more of a reason to communicate and look at the positives of one another and learn to get along. Okay, because, we know some of the stuff that's preventing that. It's our people's what I call ghetto pride, ghetto ego. You know what I'm saying? Just like your mom said earlier today, when the sister put on her bag back when the brother walks by, you said that's pathetic. You said that's something that shouldn't be happening in our community. But, when it comes to things like, white supremacy, the Willie Lynch letter, these are things I'm saying that is still in effect today, holding our people back. When these topics come up sometimes, I'm even afraid to speak because I don't want any brothers, I don't even want a sister, especially a sister, to get offended by anything I say. So I'm hoping, and so anytime I'm speaking, I pray to y'all that a sister will hear what I have to say, and hopefully she could, be happy about, and say some stuff I said, like when a sister I had dated in the past, Crystal, when it's involved with my mother, that we couldn't be together. Now, Steve Harvey said the same thing, but at the end of the day, that's thinking selfishly because For one, it could be a case where his mother died when he was a child. That's not his fault. And if you say that, that means that not because his mother has passed away that he doesn't have a right to have a wife, so now he's supposed to be a homosexual. That doesn't make sense. So there's different things that happen for different reasons. And I think that if we choose as a people to have more of an open mind, then we can see things a little different. Even Anaya Alevi has said this. If we see things a little different, then things could change. That's around us. What do I do to make an example? What I've always done all my life. I pray to Yah to the best of my ability. Okay, I study Torah, of course, every day. I keep them commandments to the best of my ability, and every time I go outside to the real world, first thing I do is I say, Yah, Torah, the moment I get up, I say, Torah, Yah, for another day. I say not to feel my prayers. Wash up, of course, get dressed before I go out. Please, Almighty Yah, you and the good angels guide and protect me everywhere I go. Okay, and what I do is, if I see something as simple as a child with a sneaker untied, please tie your sneakers so you don't trip. If I see a sister with heavy bags, I offer to help her. If I see a sister with a baby stroller, I offer to help her with a stroller. If I see an elder, I run right to the elder to help the elder. Because I want my people to see, regardless to the nonsense in the media, okay, or what their personal feelings are and emotions, I'm somebody who is making a difference. So I don't just talk about it, I'm living that difference.
Okay.
And now today, by the grace of Yah. Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Go ahead, finish.
Kane,
finish.
Kane, if I can finish, Kane. So, yeah, like I was saying, right now, because of me being an activist in the community, I'm known by, or some people I know you might not know, but there's famous names of people who know me in the community, like who? Those like Queen of Four, all right? For Valentine, you have Dr. Africa, Dr. Sages, who I've been a student of. New York City Councilman Charles Barron. If Nancy Gab, if you walk with Nancy Gab, okay, to Harlem today, from St. Nicholas to Lexington Avenue, all of the good elders that have been out there for many years, they would all tell you the good men they've known me to be for over 16 years. Not 2 minutes, not 2 days, but for over 16 years. And by the grace of Yah, I'm somebody who's over 18 with no criminal record. By the grace of Mighty Yahweh. So when I'm saying that, I'm saying to say that, yes, there's an equal hatred with some of our women and brothers in Israel too, not just outside, but in Israel too. There's a secret agency that is on both sides with some of the men and some of the women too. Okay, and
okay. Thank you so much. I think we have some technical difficulties, but we heard a lot from Gad and Toda for all of the really important points that he made. So we're hearing that in some spaces we don't reward men for being affectionate, for being good fathers, although those were part of the list of things we said make men good men. And so we don't necessarily consider those men when we see them as ideal mates. And so we hear a lot of that happening with Gas. I really appreciate him sharing his testimony with us and corroborating the fact that the fact that some of the very attributes that we say that we want in men, we don't necessarily acknowledge, and that we do see that men as well as women are producing expectations of violence in certain spaces. As Brother Mercy and now Brother Gad has said, that women are gravitating to the man that is more aggressive. And we're looking at why that is so. What is it about society that is glamorizing the aggressive man? What about society is doing these things? What about faith traditions are doing these things? What about media? What about the way the news is reporting things that encourage the idea that men being aggressive or violent is just part of being a man? What I found interesting during one of the sessions that we had was that the way news was discussing mass shooters, the conversation was, and I think it might have been Brother Mercy if it wasn't Gad, that just said that the people that we see are in these violent spaces, these are men. When we talk about the ones who are carrying out violent crimes. It is the men. Now, we have all of these conditions. Women are also in these conditions, but the ones that are expressing things aggressively or through violence are the men. And according to what we were looking at, we were examining the way the news portrays it. And the news is like, well, that's just the men are aggressive, or that there was even the attempt by several news outlets to say that there's a chemical in the man that forces him to do this thing. They attribute it to the endocrine system and to all of these other biological determinants to make it sound as if men are just hardwired to be violent, and there's nothing we can do about it but sit back and accept it. It was also highlighted that when violence is done, it's never that there was a male shooter. It's just that there was a shooter. The gender is not indicated because it's just kind of accepted that it's going to be a male. But when it's a female, it's like the woman shooter, and because it's such a shock to the social conscience for a woman to be so out of character. But it's less of a shock to the social conscience for the men to exhibit violence, and then we find ways to explain it away. And so I wanted this conversation to be about looking at how we might be complicit in some of this abusive behavior. As Nefshi said earlier, that the men aren't getting the kind of help that they need. And yes, there's a lack of resources. Yes, there's a stigma on asking, but is there even more so that because we don't let them want to change, we keep reinforcing an idea of what masculinity looks like through our behavior, through what we accept, through what we desire, through what we reproduce, and through our faith traditions and some of our cultural norms. We have normalized aggressive behavior in boys and men. And Mona, what are your thoughts?
It's layered. I think it's layered. It's so many things to consider. What is normal, quote unquote? What is nature? What is nurture? What is hardwired? To strip the masculine principle of what. If we look at aggression and what it is, it falls under, in my estimation, protection, right? From something that's an intruder, that's transgressing a boundary, And you have to go now on the offense to protect, or defense to protect from what's coming to harm you or yours. And so that principle within the masculine principle is something that's activated when he's in danger. Well, people in general, but more specifically, we're looking to the man because he's equipped with these muscles to, be to be activated when there's danger. But because of the context that I would say what's socialized over the years, and I heard it before, is that he hasn't really had the space to do it where it's acceptable, meaning he hasn't really had his own land to protect, his own army, the things that represent him that he can take pride in, that they can take pride in, And so because it's been for others, it's been stripped away from him, then we look at it as a negative. Like, for instance, I don't know why, but I revisited Black Panther yesterday for many reasons, but I revisited, and in that context, they had an army. They had all of these people who could protect something that was worth protecting. And in that space, one would say, masculine principle, good job. You see what I'm saying? And so we're kind of looking at him out of his element, out of where he should be, and it makes it, again, something that doesn't go away. It's just misplaced, and it's used against those within his household. It's used against to hurt internally as opposed to protecting what you should be protecting. And so, I wouldn't personally, like I said in closing, I wouldn't really strip everything away. I think it's just in the wrong direction, in the wrong way, and as I said in the beginning, with a lack of understanding and discipline of how and when this mechanism should be used and utilized. I will relinquish to myself.
Thank you for that. Am I still? Great. Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. we're going to wind down because we're already into the overtime portion of the show. So only those who have called in are able to hear us. If you're still on the line and you would like to join the conversation, please press 1. We're going to wind down and get our final thoughts. So I'm going to go around the table, and I will begin with the elders. Imana Ami, your final thoughts.
Again, I think this is a very important topic. I'm sure that there's going to be more discussion on it. But certainly this is a very important topic because it is so prevalent in our communities. And it's something that we need to really look at. We need to really develop a different perspective on it. It is not masculine for a man to beat a woman half to death and all that kind of stuff. It's not even masculine for them to be killing up each other like they are. And I think that if we can sort of switch the dialogue, or if we can sort of put into the conversation the fact that you can be masculine without being aggressive towards your brother or your sister, and that you can still maintain your presence without resorting to these methods, that we might do a lot better. And I do understand that our men, their lives are at a premium because the society views them that way. I mean, anytime you can be barbecuing on your lawn or playing with a toy gun or sitting in the park or going into your mother's house and be shot to death, we realize that it's very, very bad for our men. You know, not that it wasn't bad before, but now it's even getting worse, particularly in this environment of white supremacy, which has been given full throttle ahead by the leadership of this country. Still, our protection has mainly been, of course, the Most High God has looked over us, but our protection has been in the fact that we sort of kept it together in our communities. And I think that if we're going to do anything again, it is going to be better to try to orientate our community a little differently. And I realize this is not easy, but I know that it has to be done. Zehu.
Toda, Ima, wise words indeed. Ima Yehudi, do you want to add anything to that?
No, not really. Ima said it a lot, and I concur with her.
Do you have any final thoughts about any other? We covered a lot of really great subjects. If you wanted to build on any of the other ideas you heard mentioned this evening, feel free to just share with the audience.
Well, just that we need more formats, like Naomi said, to really get to the root, because sometimes it's not. We don't say everything we like to say. This is a time-consuming subject. It's a broad subject, too. What I'm getting out of it is how do we help our own people with the violence, the perception of who they are and what roles that they should put, who they are as a people, as an Israelite people. I think that's the main thing. But at this time, I have no comment. I concur with maybe a later time when we have Under the Palm, or I'll talk to you later. But
well,
I just on the listening mode right now. All this good information.
So that's a great position to be in, just listening, observing, absorbing. Of course, you're always welcome to all the conversations, Ima. We really appreciate both of you. Toda for that. I have Yaisha and Nefshi on the line. So I'm going to go to Nefshi first and then Yaisha. Nefshi, do you have any final thoughts? Thank you for joining us. How was your first experience on the panel? Tell us a little bit about it.
Oh, Ingvar. I agree with Ima, all three Imas prior to getting to myself. We are out of our element. We're not in the land. We're not home. So therefore, we're dealing with a culture that instituting confusion, be it the mannerisms and their deities. Our men, our women, we're all in trouble until we go and build that foundation. I agree with Iman Anis. We have to start this conversation, and putting out there this conversation, it builds. And the other Ima that said that these are layers. It's so true. We start dealing with that conversation, therefore, the layers. There are many layers, but they'll start to peel away little by little, and our people will begin to understand how they should heal, and that healing is essential for us to stay in the graces of the Most High. But yes, excellent conversation, excellent.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're always welcome to come back. And thank you for sharing this evening, Nefshi. Nefshi is one of the sisters from Hanasim. We really appreciate you coming through. Thank you. You're welcome. I'll see you Sunday. Yaisha, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here. Shalom.
Hey, final thoughts to wind down this evening?
I know. Okay, as far as when you said genetically predisposed, I haven't done the research to know if men are more genetically predisposed to violent or aggressive behavior than women. But I will say I do conclude that I would say nurture more than nature, meaning that I feel that men are orientated to be more aggressive than, let's say, women. I think that the how we as a society, and I guess that was the question and the topic in the first place,
right.
Maybe we are adapting our males to be more aggressive, per se, based on how we react and how we, reward certain behavior and how we encourage certain behavior. And in the same way as a backlash, and I think Imanami brought this up, now you see this homosexual, trend now. And once again, that's another. Some people would argue that's they were born like that. That's but that too appears to be environmental and nurtured as well. So just to answer the question, I'm going to reiterate that I think it's more of the way our men are orientated and environment, and I'll leave it at that. Dehu.
Okay, I'm going to leave it to Amona but what you said speaks also to what Guy was saying earlier when we talk about what we reward in men. And the guy was saying that he did in his experience find that men were rewarded for other spaces of affection and being intimate or being maybe attentive, and that men don't get rewarded for those things. So we socialize them to be distant, to be aggressive, to be all of these other things that later we are uncomfortable with. So what you said, what Guy said, what you said, all of these are tremendous insights, and I really appreciate these contributions to the conversation. We are at 10:24, so I'll get Amuna for her final thoughts, and Ima Naami, if you would do the honor of praying us out, that would be great. So I want to go to Ima first.
You said you was going to Ima?
Ima or Imuna?
Imuna.
Okay, that's what I thought you said. All right, tell that.
I would say all praise be to the Most High, the Holy One. As it started off in the top of the hour, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're taking the opportunity to continue to bring light to the subject that oftentimes gets swept under the rug. If you are listening to the sound of my voice and you are being abused in any shape, form, or fashion, verbal, mental, spiritual, physical, there are many resources. Begin to pray, seek the face of the Most High. Reach out to those your family, someone who can aid you. Be educated about your situation and circumstance, because there's not a blanket solution to what someone is going through. As we said in the beginning, you have to be educated on these matters. Find someone who's educated, reach out to them, and get help, especially if it's you, if you have your children in this situation, as well if you're a male in this situation. Reach out for help, because no, the Most High does not want you to suffer in silence and become a martyr for someone else's inability to control themselves. So all praise be to the Most High may continue to be with us as we go through these very serious times. Iman, the mic is yours.
Mayada, do you want anybody else to say anything else before we close out?
Cool. We went through the round table. I wanted to say something and then let you ask you to please pray us out before the Most High. I wanted to say I want to say it already. I wanted to close the show with saying, yes, if there is someone listening out there and that they're in an abusive or harmful situation, that they need to feel free to escape. They are not in bondage there. There are no faith traditions. There are no cultural conditions. There are no expectations that permit you to be unsafe. If you feel as if you are not safe, if you feel mentally that you cannot survive in a space, if you are being physically abused in a space, if you need to speak to someone, male or female, please speak to someone. If you have someone who is isolating you from your network or isolating you from your safe spaces, that's a signal that you may not be safe. No one would separate you or disconnect you from safety. So with that, I will yield and turn the mic over. I want to thank Brother Sal for allowing us to have a platform to have these conversations. I want to thank the callers, Brother Mercy and Brother Gad, for contributing to the conversation and giving a male perspective to the female panel. And with that, I'll yield. Emma, please pray us out.
Okay. Give me 1 second, please, if you will. I just wanted to say before I pray us out, there is a hotline, a National Domestic Violence Hotline. And I'll give you that number. I'm going to give it to you, Mayana, and you can pass it out to anybody. You can distribute it on this call or anyplace else. But the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. The word SAFE or 7233. I'll give it again. 1-800-799-7233. So you can
we have 1-800-799-7233. I'll give that number to Sal, and he will include it in the description box for our YouTube portion of the show.
Okay, Toda Rabah. Okay.
Toda.
Are we ready?
Yes. Okay.
Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam. Elohei Avatenu Avraham, Yitzchak Yisrael. Toda Rabah lekol devarim shalach lanu. Ve'tam shik habrakim lanu ki anaknu amka ze madua. For the time, Yahweh, anaknu lisneka lemor baruch atah tamid ve'tamid mehadir et atah. Yahweh, our power, the power of Abraham, of our fathers Abraham, Yitzchak, and Israel, we come before thee to thank thee for all things and for everything. We thank thee because you have remembered us, because we are thy people. We ask that you would continue your blessings to us because we are thy people, not because of our great righteousness, but because you are merciful and compassionate. We ask that you would bless each and every person who is participating in this call, and even those who are not, and all the families connected to them, each and every one from the youngest to the eldest. We ask, oh God, that you would be particularly with Sister Wendy's family as they mourn the loss of their young baby, that you would be with all the sick and the shut-in in the house of Israel, remembering especially at this time Cohen Pincus and his family, that you would be with the very Yusana and remember her with a special kindness at this particular time. And for all those who need healing, whether we have mentioned them or not, oh Yah, that you would be with them. Be with my oldest son Abdel even in that list. We ask, oh Yah, that you would be with all of our people who are incarcerated in the prison houses. We ask that you would be with those who are homeless or seeking shelter, oh Yah. We ask, as is the nature of this call, oh Yah, we thank you for bringing us together for this forum. When we ask, oh Yah, if there's any among our people who are suffering from domestic violence, who are suffering from hurt, and who are suffering at the hands of someone who would hurt them and maim them, that you, oh Yah, would send help to them and cause them to come out of those situations. Because we know, oh Yah, that when families are abused, and we say families, we know that it's not only the person being abused, but it's also the children. It's also everyone involved in that. We need so much healing, oh Yah, so heal us, please. Heal us from the hurts and the degradation that we have suffered from. Cause us to come back to thy laws, statutes, and commandments so that we may be healed and that we would find favor before thee. Oh, Yah, we ask that you, again, bless each and every individual on this line. We ask a blessing for our brother Sal, who has allowed us this forum. We ask for all the people who work behind the scenes to put such forums, such fora together, and even all the places wherein our people can gather to even get the understanding and some wisdom and some knowledge and some understanding, oh Yah, about thy laws, statutes, and commandments. We ask, oh God, that you would guide our every footsteps, that you would guide us with wisdom, knowledge, and most of all, understanding, so that we may be a people who are united, a people who can put aside our petty differences, a people who can stop the violence that we perpetrate against each other, a people who will no longer be incarcerated, but who will be a free people to stand before thee, to give thee the praise, honor, glory, and exaltation that is due to thy name. At a time, in the meantime, O Yah, we thank thee again for all things and for everything, and ask that thy name, O Yah, be praised now and forevermore. And also, Yah, we ask a special blessing for our children who are coming up in these environments, O Yah, that you would put a special protection over them, O Yah, in their goings out and their comings in and all of their interactions, that you would be with them and cause them to be raised up as the children were even in the wilderness, to be able to go into the land, to be able to stand tall, to be able to exonerate, to be able to exalt thy high, holy, and exalted name. Again, O Yah, we thank you for all things and for everything, and ask that thy name be praised now and forevermore, as we say, Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam, Elohei Avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak Yisrael, who only doeth wondrous things, and may thy name be praised now and forevermore. Hallelujah. Amen.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.